Hello everyone. Okay, so I hope my voice is now audible. So guys, welcome to the newspaper analysis. In the today's video, we are going to discuss the entire analysis of the Hindu newspaper. We'll take all the articles, we'll simplify the articles, we'll understand their context, their background, as well as the way forward. Now, before starting up, I would like to tell you that you are new. If you are new here, you can download the explainer PDF. In this explainer PDF, we had given the notes, the simplified notes of all the articles that had come. Okay, you can download these notes from the Telegram channel. The link for the Telegram channel has been given in the description box in YouTube. Moreover, you can directly visit the Telegram and can search there by typing Thinking Palette by Sahil. Now, before starting up, first of all, let's take the overview of the entire newspaper so that we can understand that what are the important articles and what is the placement of all these articles. Now, first article talks about the war causing immense human sufferings G20. So the G20 meet has concluded, and in that particular direction, all the important key takeaways will take. And now the India's presidency of G20 will start. At COP27, India and three others oppose the carbon border tax. We'll see this particular article as what it is talking about. Then guys, further in the city section, Mehroli murder, okay, AAP MLAs held for trying to sell MCD poll tickets. So the regional politics, crime related news is not important for the examination, so no need to go there. And then there are these advertisements, etc., that has been given. So guys directly will be moving to the editorial page. The unsitting of vice chancellor is faulty. So we'll see this controversy that is going on with respect to the vice chancellors. Recently, the Kerala governor has ordered the removal, had ordered that 11 vice chancellors of the universities should unseat. So we'll see that entire issue. Then Baghdad gets a government but violence haunts Iraq. Now guys, the article, it is talking about the internal politics and all such kind of things. Okay, not important article with respect to the UPSC examination. Okay, then getting ready. So this article talks about the G20. We'll see this particular article also. Halting the slide, Biden G meeting only a first step towards stabilizing the fraught relationship. So guys, on to the sidelines of the G20, Joe Biden, the American president, and Xi Jinping, they had held a bilateral meeting, though much concrete things not came out, but it is a kind of a thing which might signal that the relation which were in a very deep freezer, fine, they are now again coming back in the normalization. Quest for the transparency in FTA negotiations, a very good article with respect to the exam. We'll see that. Uneasy political situation in Rajasthan. Article doesn't contain much of substance with respect to the exam. Unknown sources of income spikes after the electoral bond entry. We'll see this article briefly. Then moving on, who should pay for the climate damage? We'll see this particular article with respect to the exam. What is the target level of retail inflation? Briefly, we'll see this also. Thought experiments with William Gibson's in cyberspace where hacks rules. So guys, this is a bibliography article. Okay, now the article doesn't contains article doesn't contains much of the important substance. Okay, so no need to go in this particular article. However, if you have interest into the cyber fiction, then you can read that. Then India's G20 presidency, we'll see this particular article again. Demonetization was part of a step to boost the formal economy. So the finance minister had said that the demonetization of 2016 was an attempt to digitize the economy more. Okay. That India deploys new docks, upgrades speedboats at the Pangong So patrol. So the Pangong So lies at the flashpoints between the India and China at the line of actual control. So there the infrastructural upgradation is being done. Then moving on, India takes part in the Moscow talks. So we'll see that what these Moscow talks are and what are the important thing. Fine. Now then the political articles etc. has been given. No need to go there. Then guys, further moving on, Supreme Court allows a pension to 32 former women officers of IAF. Okay. Then coming to the world page, Poland says missile that hit it was Ukrainian stray. So guys, there is a little one development that has happened. What actually happened? In the Poland, one of the missile had landed and it had caused some damage to property, and there are the fatalities also that had happened. Now because of now this particular missile, from where it came, it was provided that this missile has been launched from Russia. It was a Russia made missile that was being provided. Now, if this particular thing would have been true, it might have led to more confrontation. Why? Because Poland, it is a member of the NATO. So therefore, the other Western countries would also have come in this particular development. But now it has been confirmed by the Poland that actually the missile was not fired by the Russia. Okay, so by this particular thing, the matter has little bit diffused. Okay, now you don't need to go and track this entire development. You are not required to go too much into the detail, because as this Russia Ukraine war is going on, many such kind of a developments are evolutionary thing which is going on. So all these developments are not important. Okay, then moving on, Biden Sunak discusses Indo-Pacific Northern Ireland at G20 summit. So we will see that what India has done here also. Okay, then after that, coming to the business page, hold urgent meetings of the GST councils, West Bengal's Amit Mitra urges finance ministers. Uh, then moving on, better data practice can boost the profits. So we'll see this particular article also. Then the corporate trends, etc., has been given, and then we have the sports page. So this is, guys, the overview of the entire newspaper. And now let's discuss all the relevant articles that are important for the exam one by one with the detail along with the background. Now, before starting up, in every class, I give you a GS quotation which can be used in one of your answers to complement it. Today we'll take the quotation. Today we'll take the quotation from the Archibald MacLeish. He says, democracy is never a thing done. Democracy is always something that a nation must be doing. So understand this thing. Democracy is not a target that has been achieved and you are done for the life. Rather, democracy is a process that keeps on going. Democracy is a system that keeps on evolving. And democracy perfects itself from day by day, generation by generation. For example, guys, see this particular thing. You cannot say that in 1950, we adopted the constitution and basically the democracy has just been achieved and now there is nothing to be done. No, democracy will be it will be evolutionizing day by day. So democracy is a thing that a nation must be doing continuously. In this particular direction, we need to give more and more rights. We need to provide the citizens more and more voices. Empowerment is to be given. Fine. Now this particular quotation can be used in the answers related to the GS paper number 2, governance, democracy. Even in the essays, there can be high utility of this particular idea. Now moving on to the next article. Okay, the first article. Now, here actually what we have done, we have clubbed three articles. Fine, three articles. One is from the page number 1, then one is from the page number 10, and one article from the editorial section. Now, all these three articles are talking about the G20 summit that has just concluded in the Bali, Indonesia. We'll see that what are the key takeaways that had come out of this particular meet. Fine. And particularly with respect to the India, we'll see that what important bilateral meets have been held between the India and between the other countries. Now, before starting, guys, let's talk little bit of a background. So, guys, when we talk about the G20, G20 is the group of 20 countries which include 19 countries and one block of European Union. Now, when we talk about the G20, G20's meet is held into the Bali. Now, in this particular meet, first of all, what has happened? The most important thing, the India's presidency will be starting from the December 1. So the Indonesian president had given the ceremonial gavel to Indian Prime Minister, and for the next year, that is 2023, India will assume the G20's presidency. Now, first of all, the timing is very crucial. Why? Because this is the timing when the world is facing multiple challenges on the multiple fronts. First of all, we see that there are the economic hardships that are coming. Why economic hardships? First of all, global inflation is very much high because there are the supply side bottlenecks due to the Russia-Ukraine war that is going on. Secondly, we see this particular thing that the crude oil price is very much high again because of the Russia-Ukraine war disruptions that is going on. Thirdly, because of the post-pandemic recovery has not been very much effective. Due to that also, there is the subdued demand. There is a subdued demand. Because of that particular thing, the exporting nations, they are facing a kind of a slowdown. Indian exports, fine, are also getting hampered by that particular direction. Then, guys, we also see this particular thing that there is the global recessionary trend that is going on. All the countries are facing a fear of the recession, particularly due to two developments, COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war that is going on. Then there is the political polarization. We see that the world has divided again in two camps where Russia and China are there on one hand and on another hand there is the Western world. So this particular thing is making world more and more dangerous place. And here India, when it is assuming the G20 leadership, G20 being the grouping of the developing and developed countries, India has a very big responsibility to diffuse this particular tension that is going on. Now, as this G20 summit was held for 15th and the 16th November, there was even the fears that a joint statement will not even come because the countries are divided on so many of the things. But finally, the G20, it has succeeded in producing a joint statement, and a 17-page consensus document, a joint statement has been given. Now, in this particular joint statement, what has happened, guys? Just I want to tell you a little bit in the detail. So, joint statement has provided that the Ukraine war had led to a lot of economic difficulties. It has enhanced the insecurities in the world, and even a fear of nuclear war. A fear of nuclear war has become imminent. These are all the troubles that had come because of the Ukraine war. Now, in the start, the joint statement was drafted in such a way that Russia is responsible for Ukraine war, and Russia is responsible for all the economic insecurities, all the nuclear war threats that are coming. But what India did, now you see this thing. India is an important member, going to be the president the next year, and India is having the good relations with the Russia. Why? Because first of all, we are importing right now the S-400 Triumph defense system. Fine defense system from the Russia. One thing. Second thing, Russia, I have yesterday told you, has today become the biggest exporter to oil, biggest exporter of oil to India. Even Russia has surpassed the Saudi Arabia. So we are importing the Russian oil. Thirdly, Russia is not asking onto the dollar, not insisting onto the dollars. Russia is even accept rupee, is ready to accept the rupee for the international trade. Then finally, Russia is also important defense partner for India. So if this joint statement would have pinned all the responsibility on the Russia, and as India is there, fine, India Russia equation would have got disturbed. So what India did, India just tried to amend this particular joint consensus statement, and India said that yes, Ukraine war is leading to insecurities, but we should not specifically pick Russia for that particular thing. So Russia's, the blame that was put onto the Russia, it has been dropped by the India's efforts, and we said that Ukraine war is problematic and the war should come to an end. By that particular thing, Indian diplomacy had played a very important role. Okay, so we say that Ukraine war is causing the economic difficulties, insecurities, and the threats of nuclear weapons are there, but don't blame one country. That is something that has been done, and it is very mature of India. Then the next thing that has happened is that basically the G20 presidency has been assumed, and the Prime Minister had provided this thing that India will make sure that the G20 should be inclusive, ambitious, decisive, and action oriented. Now please use these particular kind of lines in your answers. Okay, so this is something that the the prime minister of our country, fine, had emphasized. Then the India has also emphasized that while we will be the part, while we'll be the president of the G20, we will focus on women-led development. Now there can be women-centric development, and there can be the women-led development or women-owned development. Now the new idea is the women-led development. Just few days back, if you remember, when the Ela Ben Bhatt passed away, I had explained you the Grahini theory of international relation. In the Grahini theory of international relation, the peace, the women empowerment, they are very much important. And now, as the women-led development is the focus even into the G20, the Grahini theory of international relation, India is further putting that we can see. Why? Moreover, India has given the theme for the G20 also, that is the one earth, one family, one future. And I believe that it goes very much in line with the India's ancient philosophy of Vasudeva Kutumbakam. So the Vasudeva Kutumbakam has been incorporated in G20 also. Moreover, India will also be showcasing its diversity through the G20, because India had provided that throughout the year there will be more than 200 G20 meetings that will be held, and they will be held into the different locations across the country. And as the leaders will be coming, so we will showcase that particular diversity at the global scale. Now this is something that had happened into the G20, and this is something that India is going to do. Now guys, there are the couple of bilateral meets also that had held in this G20. Bilateral meets are between Indian Prime Minister and between the prime ministers and the presidents of the other countries. Now, first of all, we had the bilateral meet with the British Prime Minister, with the Britain. Now, guys, understand a little bit of a background first. India is negotiating a free trade agreement which is named as Bilateral Trade and Investment Agreement BTIA from a very long time. Now, before the Diwali, that bilateral trade investment agreement was to be finalized, but up till now that has not happened. So India, so the our Prime Minister had met the British Prime Minister and had raised this particular matter. The matters of trade, mobility, defense, security had been raised. And though India UK free trade agreement missed the deadline, it has been discussed that how as early as possible it should be done. Then next, what has happened? The Prime Minister had met the Italian Prime Minister also and had focused on enhancing the India-Italy cooperation. And with the Italy, we want to cooperate on energy, defense, culture, fine boosting the efforts for climate change, economic partnerships. Okay, so this is something that we have discussed here. Then the next thing is that we also had the meet with the German Chancellor, and here the India had talked about the green partnership, renewable energy, and trade and investment. Now, green partnership is something where both the countries will be providing the renewable technologies to each other, will be providing cooperation to each other. Now, when we talk about the Germany, Germany can provide the investment into the India, particularly for the green renewable energies, okay, solar energy. So that something we have discussed with the Germany. Then the Prime Minister has also met with the French President Emmanuel Macron and had referred to the defense partnership between the India and France. You might be knowing about the Rafale deal that happened. So the France plays a very important role in India's defense. Moreover, on to the civil nuclear cooperation also we have talked on to the with the France and the Jatpur nuclear power plant that is being developed by the French help. That plant has been delayed. So how as early as the talks can be resumed, that is also something that has been discussed. And then we also had met, the Indian Prime Minister had met basically the Singaporean counterpart Lee Hsien Loong and had discussed about the ASEAN Indian partnership. Bilateral talks have been done that how between the India and the Singapore the cooperation can be enhanced. Fine. Then fintech, financial technology companies, fine renewable energies, skill development, health, pharmaceutical sector, on all them the cooperation has been done. So basically bilateral meets, we had bilateral meet with Singapore, France, Italy, Germany, UK. These are very, now these all countries are very important trade partners of India, and having that bilateral meets with them, it means that India is further going to reap the economic strategic dividends from them. So this is all which has happened here. Fine. And guys, after that we have actually covered the most of the ground that has been there. Okay, so that is all about it, and now we'll move to the next article. Okay, at COP27, India and three others oppose carbon border tax and who should pay for climate change. So these are the two articles that had come into the Hindu newspaper, and both articles are pertaining to the development at the Conference of Parties 27, which is right now going on in the Egypt. Okay, so what we have done, we have clubbed these two articles together, and in a combined manner, we'll see what are the developments that had come. Now, first of all, this particular article will be important with respect to GS paper number 3. GS paper number 3, climate change negotiations. Climate change negotiations. Okay. Now, you see this particular thing, guys, that as this COP27 is going on, there is first of all a friction between developed country on one hand and the developing country on the another hand. Developed country says this thing that all the countries need to take the equal responsibility of the climate change that is happening. But on the other hand, the developing countries say that no, that is not correct thing, because the developed countries are the historic polluters, and because they are the historic polluters, they need to do more. India always puts forward the principle of CBDR, that is common but differentiated responsibility. So responsibility is differentiated. That is something that has been provided. Now, guys, as these negotiations are going on, I tell you that already there is the kind of a there is already certain areas on which there are certain confrontations. Now there is the new irritant that has come, that is the carbon border adjustment mechanism. Now what is this carbon border adjustment mechanism? So basically the European Union had proposed that we need to tax the products such as the cement, steel, which are extremely carbon intensive. Now you see this thing. When we talk about the steel production, when we talk about the cement production, for that a lot of energy is required, and that energy from where it is coming? It is coming from burning of the coal. So therefore, the end product, that is the cement, the steel, they become highly carbon intensive. So the countries which are exporting them, sorry, the countries which are exporting them, on that the taxations need to be imposed. This is something that they have provided, and this taxation will come in effect by the 2026. Now the developing countries have a problem with this. Why? Because when we talk about India, India is a major exporter of the cement and steel, and Indian cement and steel are dependent on the coal energy, the energy from the coal. So therefore the developing countries are not happy about that thing. Now the basic, it is a grouping which consists of the countries such as the Brazil, India, South Africa, China. Now the basic grouping, it is not happy with that, and they have said this particular thing, that actually we are lot dependent on the coal. Fine, and we actually be reducing our coal consumptions, okay, and we want to transition to the clean energy, but it needs some time. You cannot just put the deadline of 4 years, that is by 2026 you need to not use them. Now it will impact the developing countries in two ways. Number one, if these taxes will be imposed, what will happen? Our exports will become uncompetitive, and as our exports will become uncompetitive, we will face an economic loss here. Our exports will go down. Second thing, let's say we try to make sure that our steel, our cement sector, they are not dependent on coal, rather they are using the renewable energies. For that particular thing, there are the high cost that is needed, but right now we don't have money for that particular thing. If we put the cost in this particular direction, we have to sacrifice for poverty alleviation, we have to sacrifice for many other things. So this particular issue is going to impact the developing countries. So therefore we are not happy with this particular thing. Now the statement that have been issued by the developing countries, including the India, it has expressed the grave concern, and it has said that developed countries were not showing leadership or responding with a matching effort. Every time just they are trying to pick up the developing countries and are trying to impose on the developing countries the most of the responsibilities. It has been provided by the developing countries that it is just a unilateral measure and a discriminatory practice that is there. Fine, carbon border tax, it is a discriminatory. Why? Because who will be impacted? The developing countries will be impacting because they are using the coal. Okay, and secondly, they don't have money also to invest into the renewable energies and all such kind of a thing. So this is something, and it must be avoided. Fine. The basic countries have also called for a solidarity response by all the developing countries. Okay. Now it has been provided that as the responsibilities are shifting on the developing countries, we need to come together. Okay. Moreover, India had also provided this thing that at the same time, developed countries, they are having the double standards. First of all, they have backtracked onto the finance, they have backtracked onto the mitigation commitments, onto the pledges. Fine, $100 billion of climate finance that was to be provided by 2020. Up till now, that $100 billion every year has not come to the developing country. They have promised it way back in 2009. So you have not given the finance, so they have backtracked on that mitigation commitment. The technologies, renewable energy technologies, have not been transferred. Moreover, there is a significant increase in consumption of fossil fuels in the past year by developed countries also. Understand this particular thing, what is happening now when we talk about the developed countries. Okay, you know, right now Russia Ukraine war is going on. Now the developed countries said that they will go towards the green energy, but for the green energy they need to have a transitional energy. Now what was this transitional source of energy? It was the natural gas, and Russia was the major provider of natural gas to the Europe. But because of the Russia Ukraine war is going on, and the Nord Stream pipeline and other pipelines are suspended, so the Russian gas is not coming to the Europe. And what Europe is now doing? Europe is reopening their coal-fired power plants. They are increasing the consumption of the coal. So these developed countries, they have fallen back on onto the fossil fuel. So they are not doing anything and are expecting from the developing country that they should do everything that is possible. Fine. So this is one point of confrontation that has come. That is the carbon border adjustment mechanism. Just a minute. Carbon border adjustment mechanism, or if you want to remember the simplified name, that is the carbon border tax. This is the carbon border tax controversy. Then The next issue that comes is of the climate finance. Now, this particular topic we have discussed multiple number of times up till now, and every day one article comes on this particular line. So basically, it has been provided that when industrial revolution came, the industrial revolution first came in the countries which are developed today. Between 1900 and now, the developed countries have benefited from the industrial development, and as they got the industrial development, they had also led to the greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, now the developing countries, they started to grow late, they started to develop later, but it doesn't mean that they don't have any right onto the environmental resources. They have the right. Now basically, according to the estimates, according to the data, according to the our world in data.org, it has been they are running the global carbon project. Okay, and according to that, it has been provided that between the year 1751 to 2017, okay, 47% of the CO2 emissions that have happened, they have been emitted by the USA and the 28 countries of the European Union. So in total 29 countries, in total 29 countries have emitted 47% of the CO2 emissions. So therefore, these 29 countries are the ones who need to have most of the responsibility. When we talk about India today, see this thing. India is among the top 7 emitters, but per capita emission of India is very much low. Now let's talk about this thing. Guys, when we talk about the emissions per person, emissions per head, then the global per head emissions are 6.3 tons. Just a minute. Okay, so per capita per person emission, it is 6.3 ton. For USA, it is 14 ton. It means USA is emitting more carbon dioxide than the world average, 14, more than double. Then it is 13 for the Russia, 9.7 for the China. So Russia, China, USA are emitting more than the global average, but for India, it is just 2.4. So we are emitting the carbon which is one third of the global average. Forget about the developed country. So the point is that India had not emitted the carbon emission, though we are the biggest emitters, but it is because of the large population that we are having. Now, actually, if India wants to reduce the carbon emission, but what is to be done? The climate finance is to be provided to the India and all the developing countries that are there. Okay. Now it has been provided that, see, now this is a very important point that I'm going to tell you. But before that, understand one little small thing. In the past, the developed countries got a lot of benefit because of the carbon that they emitted, because of the development that they made. And as now the climate change is coming, then also the developed countries will get a benefit. And here one example of Canada has been given. So according to the Moody's estimates, it has been provided that Canada would see a rise of GDP by 0.3%. Why? Because the warmer climates, as the warmer climates will come, it will spur the agriculture and labor productivity. Now you know this particular thing, that most of the Canada, the lands are frozen, agricultural season is very much small, and as the temperatures will increase, that agriculture season will increase, the productivity will go up. Okay, the areas which are frozen, fine, they will see that little bit of thawing of the ice, so the productivity will increase, and that thing will contribute to 0.3% of the Canada. So they benefited earlier also, they will benefit even when the climate change is happening. So these developed countries must provide the climate finance. Now as the climate finance is being talked about, guys, understand this thing, that the agreement was reached in 2009, where the developed countries promised that by 2020, every year $100 billion of climate finance will be given to the developing countries. But up till now, this $100 billion has not come. Now the developing countries demand that we don't need $100 billion, we need more than that, and around 7 to 11 trillion dollars are needed by 2030 if the climate change is to be reverted. Now, up till now, no consensus has been made onto the climate finance. Even the $100 billion target has not been achieved. One positive development, though, anyhow, had happened in the Bali. What is the positive development? The rich nations, which includes the USA, Japan, Canada, they have provided that they will provide $20 billion to wean Indonesian of coal, to wean Indonesia of coal, so that the Indonesia's dependence on the coal can be reduced and Indonesia can switch to the renewable energies. $20 billion will be provided. Okay, so these countries are providing them. but and this will help the Indonesia to reach the carbon neutrality by 2050. Good, very good. But what about the other countries? They also require the finance, they also require the money, but on that particular direction nothing concrete has been done. So this is guys all about these two articles that have been there. Now moving to the next article. Okay, India takes part into the Moscow talks. Now we'll discuss the Moscow talks, but before that let's take some of the comments that had come. Sir, please clarify my doubt. My question may not be related to topic, but sir, POXO, the girl under 18, even consent is not count. It is taken as rape. What about the boys under 18? Okay, see, understand this particular thing. What is the definition of rape? You need to understand. The rape means a penetrative sex. Okay, a penetrative sex. And second, the consent is not there. Consent is not there, and there is a penetrative sex, that is called as a rape. Now, even if the girl is below the 18, boy is below the 18, the penetrative sex, who is doing the penetration? The boy. So boy can be charged. Okay, the POXO provides irrespective of the age. Okay, so then also there will be the charge that will be there. Okay, so I hope Songam, your doubt is clear. Fine. Then there is one more doubt. Sir, क्या अग्निवीर वायु से जो स्किल सर्टिफिकेट इग्नू ग्रेजुएशन लेवल का मिलेगा उससे यूपीएससी का फॉर्म भर सकते हैं? सी, इफ you need to have a degree. You need to have a degree. If you are getting the IGNOU degree, okay, fine, and that degree's status is of the UG, fine. Undergraduate degree, if you are getting, you can. Okay, if that degree is not undergraduate degree, if it is degree in some skill, then you cannot. Fine, that is something. Now, India takes part in the Moscow talks on forming inclusive government in Afghanistan. Now, this particular article will see with respect to the GS paper number 2, international groupings. Okay. Now, basically, guys, first of all, before going in this article, let's take some of the background information. We know this particular thing, that the Afghanistan has been taken over by Taliban. So what happened in 2020? In 2020, Afghanistan peace talks were held, in which the Donald Trump played a very important role. And in that particular 2020 agreements, fine, it was provided that the USA will withdraw from the Afghanistan if Taliban give them an assurance that Taliban will help in installing the democratic institutions. Taliban will not pick up the weapons against the people, fine, and the Taliban will not let Al-Qaeda and other terrorist organizations to use Afghanistan as a territory for spreading the terrorism. So there was the Afghanistan peace agreement that was signed in 2020, and as a part of that agreement, USA had withdrawn from the Afghanistan. But since USA had withdrawn from the Afghanistan, Taliban had taken over, and the credentials of Taliban are disputed. Fine, Taliban, many a times we have seen this thing that Taliban is not allowing the girls to take education. Taliban is restricting the minority rights also. So still a lot is needed to be done in the Taliban. And for that particular thing, there is the talks that are going on between the different countries on the topic that how the stability, how the peace can be brought in Afghanistan. And there is one talk which we called as the Moscow format. Fine. So Moscow format, it is one of the several dialogues that are going in Afghanistan, which are led by different countries. And into the this Moscow format, it started before the Taliban takeover of Kabul. And in the Moscow format, it consists of Russia, China, Pakistan, Iran, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and India. So all these countries are the part of the Moscow format. Now this recently the Moscow format meet has happened, and the consultations has happened in the Russian capital. Fine. Now during this particular meet, the countries have discussed that there are a lot of gaps. Fine. Still the development is a big concerns in the Afghanistan. So the issues have been discussed as how the humanitarian aid can be provided, how the ongoing efforts of various stakeholders to provide assistance can be strengthened up. Intra-Afghan talks. Now intra-Afghan talks means within the Afghanistan, the Taliban, the Afghanistan government that was there earlier, how they can come at a consensus and how they can establish a government which is representative. Okay. So efforts to counter the threats of terrorism, regional security, all these particular matters are taken up into the Moscow format talks that had happened. Now the meeting has provided that there are certain negative trends that actually started after the Taliban had taken over last year. Recently, when we talk about India, India has also led a humanitarian delegation to the Afghanistan, and as a part of that humanitarian delegation, we have provided the medicines, medical equipments, even wheats were exported to the Afghanistan. So, what I'm trying to say here, I'm trying to say here that India is a country which is very much which is putting hard, which is very much inclined to bring the peace in Afghanistan, because if Afghanistan will not be stabilized, there will be the spillover effects of terrorism that will come in India. Destabilized Afghanistan will be used by Pakistan to export terrorism in India. And for that particular thing, we are participating into the Moscow format talks, and even in the SCO and even multiple platforms. We are trying to bring the stability in Afghanistan. And on this particular direction, there are the impending issues that have been discussed. Taliban in this particular meet has not participated. We don't know what is the reason that why Taliban has not participated. Okay, so this is something. Now the things that have been discussed are very generic. Okay, how we can use these particular kind of things. So when you are talking about the India's leadership role in regional peace or India-Afghanistan relations, fine, we can use these examples such as the Moscow format talks which have been held. So that is all about this particular article. Now moving to the next article. Quest for transparency in FTA negotiations. Okay, sir, can you please tell why the issue restarted in Kerala between government and governor? So, Niranjan, many times we have taken this topic, and today also there is one editorial, so we'll discuss that. Okay. Quest for transparency. Sir, can we give prelims after completing exam without certificate? See, if you are in the third, if you are doing a degree, which is of 3 years, if you are in third year, you can give the prelims examination. You need to submit your provisional certificate or you need to submit your degree when you will be filling the mains examinations DAF, detailed application form. Before that, if you are in the third year and you have just given the exam, you can fill the form and you can write the prelims. Quest for transparency in the FTA negotiations. This particular article will see with respect to the GS paper number 3 plus GS paper number 2, international trade relations. International trade relations, bilateral talks. Fine, bilateral relations are particularly mentioned in GS2. So in GS2 it will come. GS3 also there can be these particular things that can be accommodated. Now, actually, guys, now we are negotiating the free trade agreement with many of the countries. I have just discussed so many of the free trade agreement into the G20 meet that has happened. Now, as we are negotiating the free trade agreement, there is a scope of reform that is needed in India. First of all, what do we mean by the free trade agreement? What do we mean by the free trade agreement? See this thing. In the free trade agreement, the two countries, suppose there is a country A, then there is a country B. The country A and country B will sign an agreement and they will say that they will reduce the tariffs. They will reduce the tariffs. They will reduce the barriers between the two countries so that more and more import and export, more and more trade can happen between the two countries. Right now, guys, when we talk about the UK, many of the whiskies, liquors coming from the UK, we charge high custom duty on that, and sometimes more than 100% of custom duty is being charged, which is an additional custom duty which is charged onto them. Okay, and that happens in most of the cases. So when the free trade agreement will be signed, these barriers will be reduced, these tariffs will be reduced, and by the FTA it has been provided that it is a win-win situation for both the countries because economic activity will increase. However, if I tell you India's track record with respect to the FTA, just 3 years back, there was a separate chapter into the economic survey, which had said that although it is said that the FTAs will help both the countries equally, but India most of the time did not got much of the benefit from the FTA because we did not have that prowess, we did not have that competence in our exports. So other countries take more advantage of India, but now still India is moving forward and India is trying to sign and negotiate more and more FTAs. Right now, guys, when we talk about India, India has taken a target of expanding the export to $2 trillion by 2030. And as we want to increase our export to $2 trillion, what we need? We need more and more FTAs. And therefore, we are negotiating the FTAs with many countries such as the European Union, Canada, UK, Israel, and many other countries. Now, these FTAs, they will be covering a large range of topics. For example, they will be talking about the tariff reduction, which will impact the manufacturing sector, agriculture sector. It will be negotiating the service trade rules, digital issues, data localization. Data localization means the data which is being generated in a country, that data is to be stored within that particular country. Okay, so let's say the Mastercard, Visa are generating data in India, so that card information need to be stored physically within the servers located in India. That is data localization. So data localization will be discussed, intellectual property rights will be discussed. Fine. And they will be impacting all the arenas of trade, all the arenas of business. Okay. They will be impacting the accessibility of drugs, investment, facilitation, protection. All these things will be impacted. So therefore, we can very simply provide this thing that the FTA will have the far reaching impact on any economy, any society. Yes, a huge impact will be there on the FTA. So the article is suggesting that we need to have more transparency in the FTA process. When the FTAs are getting negotiated, there more transparency needs to be there. More information is to be given to the public. Now, India's FTAs, they are signed, basically India's FTAs, they are signed behind the closed doors. Most of the information is not there in the public domain. So therefore, we need to have transparency. We need to have more of accountability in these processes. And here the example of UK has been given. So what UK does? We can learn a good lesson from UK. What UK does? Number one, this thing. Let's see, UK. Just a minute, let me use a different color pen. Yes. So UK publishes a policy paper. Okay. Suppose let's take one example. There is a UK and then there is India. Now the UK wants to sign the free trade agreement with India. Now before signing this free trade agreement, what will be happening? UK will publish a policy paper that will lay down the strategic objectives behind negotiating an FTA. Why it is important for the UK that UK should sign an FTA with the country in question? So if UK wants to sign an FTA with the India, UK had to lay down a policy paper that what are the logic of dictating the FTA with UK, how UK will get the benefit. Then second thing what is to be done, this policy paper also should contain the inputs and responses received by the stakeholders such as the business, non-governmental organizations and others. What they have to say. Do they also think that this FTA will be good? Yes or no? And what government thinks about the views given or by them. Okay, so that is also to be provided. Then the third what will happen, the strategic objectives of an FTA, they will be kept before the UK's parliament, and then the UK's parliament will be scrutinizing that, and if the parliament has given an approval, only then the UK's government will further be, the executive will further be taking up the FTA. Clear? Now the finalized FTA document. Okay, so number one we have laid the strategic objectives, we have taken the comments from the business stakeholders, then with the parliament also we got scrutinized, and then the final FTA document that will be prepared between the two countries. Okay, that final document, final treaty had to be ratified by the British parliament with an explanatory memorandum. Only then the FTA will be coming in practice. So we see that there are so many of the layers where the scrutiny is having. The treaty is being kept in front of parliament, the treaty is being the questions are being, the suggestions are being taken by the business, NGOs, all. So it is a very deliberative process, it is a very consultative process that happens into the UK, and India can learn from that. So this is a very good suggestion. And guys, this is a very important topic, FTA reforms, and I'll say that this is a 5-star article. Directly you can add the points in your answer. Now that is all guys about this particular article, and now we'll be moving to the next article. This unsitting of vice chancellor is faulty. Okay, now this particular article we'll see with respect to the GS paper number 2, federal issues. GS paper number 2, federal issues. Okay, now basically what the article is talking about, the recent issue where the vice chancellors of many of the universities have been asked to vacate their office after the Supreme Court ruling that has come. In this particular direction, there is also okay. There are some comments also that has come. I'll take it just after I complete this article. Okay. So recently Supreme Court has passed multiple judgments, and after this judgment the vice chancellors, they have been asked to vacate their office. So this is the issue that we are going to discuss here. Now, first of all, guys, there is one judgment that came, and this particular judgment was Gambirdan K. Gadwi versus the state of Gujarat. In this particular judgment, the Supreme Court quashed the appointment of the VC of the Sardar Patel University. Why? Supreme Court provided this particular thing, that the appointment of the Vice Chancellor of the Sardar Patel University was done onto the basis of the search committee. But this particular search committee did not form a panel for the appointment of VC. It did not form a panel for the appointment of VC, a dedicated panel that was suggested by the UGC. The panel in that particular line was not formed, and because that is the breach of the UGC Act, so therefore the VC that was appointed, he has to vacate the office that was provided. Okay, now you guys see this particular thing. There is the UGC Act. There is the UGC Act. There is the Universities Act. Now the UGC Act provides many of the it contained the provisions, and there is one of a regulation of the UGC Act, and as per the regulation of the UGC Act, there is the search committee that has to be formed in a particular manner, and that can be suggesting the names of the VC. So basically, in the case of the Gujarat, the panel as laid by the UGC Act was not created, and therefore the VC that has been appointed has to vacate the office. That is something that has happened. It has been said that it is going against the UGC regulation. Then there is the second case that had come into the direction of the Kerala government. So what had happened in the Kerala also, Supreme Court has given one judgment, that is the Professor Dr. Shrijit PS versus Dr. Rajshri MS case. In this particular case, what the Supreme Court provided? Supreme Court provided that the search committee here suggested only one name for the position of VC for the APJ Abdul Kalam Technological University. And this is wrong. Why this is wrong? According to the Supreme Court, the search committee had to suggest at least 3 to 5 names, and out of those 3 to 5 names, one person will be selected. But here the search committee suggested only one name, and because of that one name was suggested, and that one person has been chosen as the VC. So therefore, that is wrong. Now this is something that had happened in the case of Kerala. Now the governor of the Kerala, in a kind of a governor of a Kerala, taking inspiration from the Supreme Court judgment, had asked the 11 VCs of the universities to vacate their office, and the Kerala governor has cited the Supreme Court judgment. Now on that thing, there is a separate controversy that has opened up, because the controversy that comes here is that Constitution of India specifically provides that the governor, okay, Article 164 specifically provides that the governor has to act on the aid and advice of the Chief Minister and Council of Minister. But here the governor has acted in his own capacity. So that is a different entire controversy that has opened. We have discussed it also. Now coming back to the article. So therefore, this is something that has happened. Now, basically, at the core of the issue, why these particular VCs are being asked to vacate the office. What is the controversy at the core? So guys, see, the Supreme Court has used in this particular direction the Article 254 of the Indian Constitution. Article 254 of the Indian Constitution. Now you see this particular thing. There is the UGC Act. Okay, which is an act by the Parliament of India, and then there are the State Universities Act. Okay, now actually what happens now, the UGC Act says X and the State University Act says Y. Some of the times the State University Act, what they are saying, it has been done, and because of that particular thing, Supreme Court says that no, it is wrong, it is violative of Article 254. Now what is Article 254? Let's read it. So Article 254 provides that the provision of the state law are repugnant to the provision of the union law, the state law will become void. Understand this particular thing. That suppose on any one matter, there is a matter, suppose the matter is A. On the matter A, if there is union law, and on the matter of a same matter A, there is the state law, then the state law will become repugnant and the union law will prevail. Okay, union law will prevail. This is provided in Article 254. Now with respect to the appointment of VC, we have the UGC Act, which is a union law, and we have the State Universities Act, which is a state law. Now, who will be supreme? According to Supreme Court, the UGC Act will be supreme because UGC Act is a union law. So the state acts will become repugnant. They will be repugnant. This is something that has been provided. So we have the Article 254. Article 254, which deals with the doctrine of repugnancy. It provides that when two pieces of legislation have a conflict between them and when are applied to the same fact, but they produce different outcomes, fine, when provision of two laws are so contrary, in a very short form, what will happen when two laws are conflicting and when they are on the same subject? The union law will prevail, the parliament's law will prevail. Clear? That is something which is provided. Clear? Now coming on, so the court, what it has provided, court has provided that the search committee recommended only one name of the appointment of VC, but UGC Act provided that a panels comes at least 3 to 5 names have to be provided. So the UGC Act provided 3 to 5 names, but one name was provided. So therefore, the state act will be repugnant. Now the author is questioning the Supreme Court judgment. Author is saying this particular thing, that the Supreme Court judgment is wrong in a way. How? The author says that if we read the article number 254, we get to know some more things. Article 254, it provides that the repugnancy will be there, and repugnancy of the articles related to the state law and a substantive law made by the parliament. So repugnancy will come only when there are the laws. Understand this thing? Law made by the parliament and the law made by the state. If between two laws there is a conflict, then the parliament laws will prevail. Very good. But it doesn't applies to the rules. It doesn't applies to the regulations that are there. And the author is saying that the VC's appointment, it is not the part of the UGC Act. VC's appointment, it is the part of the UGC regulation. UGC regulation. Now, what is actually in conflict? In conflict, there is the UGC regulation and State University Act. State University Act. State University Act. Now you see this particular thing, that UGC regulation, it is actually, now when we talk about the law is passed when the legislature gives its approval. Okay, at the level of parliament, when the Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha and president will give the approval, then the law will be passed. Regulation can be passed by the government without taking the approval from the parliament. So the regulations don't have the same status as the law is having the status. So therefore, it has been provided that the rules, regulations made by the subordinate authorities, fine, though they are laid into the parliament, but they don't go through the same process of law. Normally, they do not require the approval of the parliament. Okay, so therefore, the regulations are not supreme. And if the regulation will be coming in conflict with the law, then the law has to prevail. And the law, therefore, at the level of state is more supreme. So therefore, whatever the Supreme Court has done, it is not correct. That is something. Article 13, subclause 2, fine, it provides that the law will include rules, regulations, etc. But that is only for the scope of Article 13 only. Okay, that is only for the scope of Article 13 only. So it has been provided, it has, though inclusive definition of a law given in is applicable only to that article. Okay, it is not applied to other. So when we talk about Article 254, within Article 254, we cannot say that the law will include the rules and regulations. So this is something that has happened. So therefore, the article is saying that the state laws will be more supreme in this particular direction. So guys, I hope you have understood it. But one more thing I am telling you is that you don't need to go too much into the detail in this particular thing, because we are not preparing for the law. We need to see it with respect to the generalist point of view. So the Article 254, doctrine of repugnancy that we have discussed, that is something which is little bit important. Now moving to the next article. But before that, let's take the doubts that had come. Okay, fine. Sir, please suggest how to start writing answer for mains. Jhansi Rani, understand this thing that okay, yes, the comment is from Jhansi Rani. Yes, please understand this thing, that answer writing is an art that will come after a time when you have collected the sufficient content. So first of all, collect the sufficient content, only then you can write the answer, you can attempt the answer writing. Okay. Sir, can you please help through a strategy for 2024 aspirants? I'll try to make a separate video on that, and on answer writing also I'll try to make a separate video. Right now the schedule is going very tight. Okay, I'll try to do that. Sir, I have enough knowledge for static as well as current affairs, but I'm not able to write answers. Please tell me how to improve that. Okay, so I'll try to make a session on answer writing. Okay, sir, please make another channel for daily mains answer writing. Okay, yes, I have asked it on Telegram also to make a peer reviewed channel, but I was not able to do that. Okay, I'll try to do that as soon as possible. Okay, sir, how are you? I am good, Bharti. I hope you are good too. Now, let's take this article. Unknown sources of income spiked after electoral bond entry. Now, this particular article is criticizing the electoral bond scheme. Now, this particular article will see with respect to the GS paper number 2, electoral issues. GS paper number 2, electoral issues. Okay. Now, first of all, guys, what had happened? First of all, guys, what had happened recently? The electoral bond scheme has come in the news. Now, why the electoral bond scheme has come in the news? Two developments have happened into the past. First of all, I'll explain you these two developments and then I'll explain you what this electoral bond scheme is all about, what are the controversies into this electoral bond scheme. Now, basically, first of all, let's understand what are these electoral bonds. So, electoral bonds are the banking instruments to provide the funding to a particular political party. Let's take one example. Let's take one example. Suppose this is Mr. A and Mr. A wants to donate 10 lakh rupees to the XYZ political party. What Mr. A can do? Mr. A will go to the State Bank of India. Right now, SBI banks are the designated bank to sell the electoral bonds. So the Mr. A will go to the State Bank of India, will give these 10 lakh rupees to the State Bank of India and will ask an electoral bond. He will ask an electoral bond. Now what electoral bond will be? Electoral bond will be a kind of a document on which the face value of 10 lakh rupees will be written. Okay, so this document of 10 lakh rupees the face value will be provided by the SBI bank to Mr. A. Fine, it will be provided by SBI bank to Mr. A. Now what Mr. A will do? Mr. A will give this electoral bond to the XYZ political party. Now what this XYZ political party will do? It will deposit this electoral bond in their bank account and they will get 10 lakh rupees credited in their bank account. So this electoral bond, it is an instrument, it is a banking document by which is used to provide the funding to the political parties. This is the electoral bond. Now, when we talk about the electoral bond, they can be brought at the specified branches of the State Bank of India in the multiples of 1,000, 1 lakh, 10 lakh and rupees 1 crore. Now, in the past, the Election Commission had raised concerns regarding this electoral bond scheme. And there are the multiple petitions that have also been filed into the Supreme Court with respect to the electoral bond scheme. We'll understand this criticism, but first of all, let's understand the present context. So now why the electoral bond scheme has come into the news? Because two developments that have happened in the past. Development number one, the center government had amended this particular scheme and had allowed an additional period of 15 days. And for the additional 15 days, the electoral bond sale can happen. Now you see this thing. Electoral bonds are not sold throughout the year. Only there are specific time when a person can buy an electoral bond and can give to a political party. So usually the electoral bonds are available for sale 10 days each in January, April, July, October. Okay. Whenever there are the Lok Sabha elections, then the electoral bond schemes are sold for more days. Fine. Now what has happened? Center had amended the scheme and had provided that the years in which the state elections are there, the electoral bonds can be sold for additional 15 days. Now we see that the elections are there in Himachal Pradesh. Elections have happened in Himachal Pradesh. Elections are there in Gujarat. So there are the state elections. So for additional 15 more days, electoral bonds can be sold. Now understand one thing. We see that every year we are in election mode. There is one or the other state where there will be the elections every year. So it means this 15 days additional validity that has been given, it is going to be there for every year. One thing. Second thing, Supreme Court has agreed that it will hear a petition which is challenging the electoral bond scheme. So because of that thing, the electoral bond scheme has come into the news. Now, first of all, why the electoral bonds are being criticized? Now, the opposition parties have said that the electoral bond schemes allow anonymous donation to the political parties and it undermines the essence of democracy. Now, you see this particular thing. Coming back again to our example. So, Mr. A, just let me use a thicker pen. So, Mr. A, what he did? He bought an electoral bond from the SBI bank worth rupees 10 lakh rupees. Now this particular electoral bond will be given to the XYZ political party. Now you see, on this electoral bond, the name of Mr. A will not be written. So all this particular bond, they are anonymous. Okay, it is just like a bearer note. You have a note of 500 rupees in your wallet. Okay, there is no name written on that 500 rupees note, that from where it actually came to you. Who gave it to you? Is it clear or not? So in these electoral bonds, fine, they will not contain the name of the donor. And as they don't contain the name of the donor, how we know that who is donating to a political party? What can happen? Any corporate house can donate 100 crore rupees to a political party, and the corporate house might expect that the government will bring the favorable policy for that corporate house when they will come in, when they will come in power. Now guys, nobody can know that the actually corporate house is sponsoring the political party, and the political party might actually be working for them. Nobody knows, because this entire money, it is given in an anonymous manner. Here the report of there is a report of ADR, that is the Association of Democratic Reforms. Okay, so ADR, it is a very important and a very prestigious organization. So ADR says this thing, that 70% of the income of the political parties are coming through unknown sources, including electoral bonds. Is it clear or not? Now it says that out of the total income of these many crore rupees, fine, the income from electoral bond was 88%. So out of the total unknown funding that is coming, 88% funding is coming from the electoral bond. So electoral bond is bringing anonymity into the funding. Okay, so that is an issue that has come in this particular direction. Now guys, what this particular article is talking about, this article is talking about that how many crore rupees have been elected from the funding, less than 20,000 rupees donation, unknown income, and all these breakups have been given. Okay, so you don't need to go too much into these microscopic data. However, if you just want to read the data, you can pause the video here and you can read the data. So just the data has been given. Okay, that is all about this particular article, guys. And now we'll be moving to the next article. Better data practices can help boost profits. So this particular article will see with respect to the GS paper number 3. GS paper number 3, data uh, data norms, and how data norms will enhance the profitability of the corporates. Okay, now see this particular thing. What has happened? First of all, there is a report that has been published, and the report is published by the Infosys Knowledge Institute. Infosys Knowledge Institute, it is a think tank of Infosys. It has released a report, and as per this report, they have said that the companies, the corporates will generate $460 billion in profits if they did three things. What are the three things? Number one, if they improved their data practices, fine, the way as they are collecting the data, the way as they are preserving the data, if they improve their data practices, number one. Number two, if they trusted in advanced artificial intelligence, fine. Now you see this thing, data is the new oil. Now the data mining, data patterns, okay, can be made by the artificial intelligence. So if you used it, artificial intelligence, in a proper manner. Then third, integrated AI with business operations, fine. If these three things, AI has to be incorporated in business processes and business practices, if these three things are done, then the profits to the tune of $460 billion can be generated. The Infosys Knowledge Institute provides that the companies need to embrace in a data sharing economy. They need to share the data with each other. Now you see this particular thing, that if there are some data with all the companies they are having, fine, they can do limited things of that particular data. Now you see this thing, artificial intelligence can be used on the data, and artificial intelligence can make out the pattern from the data, but we need a big data, we need a lot more data. So if entire data is pooled together, then the artificial intelligence can use that data more effectively. So the companies need to embrace data sharing. According to the Infosys Knowledge Institute, the companies that don't trust their data risk a vicious cycle of pilot purgatory and only use data and AI to solve small problems. Fine. So you need to trust the data, and the data is needed to be shared. Okay, so data management combined with the trust in artificial intelligence is the dual solution to increase business capabilities. So use, collect data, share data with each other, use artificial intelligence in that data, and that particular thing will provide enhanced profitability to the businesses. So this is about the report that has come. So briefly, we can use these particular references, reports in our answers to complement our answers. Now, moving to the next article. What is the target level of retail inflation? Now guys, this article doesn't contain much of a substance. There are just 3-4 important basic points that you need to understand. First of all, when we talk about the inflation, right now, India follows the inflation targeting. India follows the inflation targeting. And as per this inflation targeting, we try to keep inflation between the band of 2% to 6%. Actually, the inflation needs to be at 4% plus minus 4% plus minus 2%. It means 2% less than 4%, which means 2%, and 2% plus than 4%, that means 6%. So right now, the inflation targeting in India is this, that inflation needs to be kept between 2 to 6% range. Now the Urjit Patel committee recommended this inflation targeting for India. Okay, that is keeping it in 2 to 6%. And here we have the monetary policy committee, which keeps a tab on the inflation. Now you see this particular thing. What has happened? The retail inflation for the month of October had dropped to 6.77%, which is a 3-month low. But anyhow, it is still higher than the 6% range that we need to keep, because 6.77% is there. So the inflation right now in India is coming down, fine, in the last 3 years, but still it is outside the comfortable range or the tolerance range that has been fixed by the Urjit Patel committee. Now, whenever, guys, see this thing, whenever there is inflation, what government does, when inflation will be high, government follows a tight monetary policy. In the tight monetary policy, what government will do? Government will suck out the liquidity. Okay, the liquidity, the money supply into the economy, it will be sucked out by the government, or not actually by the government, by the Reserve Bank of India, majorly Reserve Bank of India. The interest rates will be increased, because if the interest rate will be high, okay, the people will not demand more of money, and when people will don't demand more of money, money supply in the economy will not be increased. So tight monetary policy is to be done. Now, as in this entire year inflation is high, repeatedly government has used the RBI has used the tight monetary policy and had sucked out the excess liquidity from the economy. Now the inflation is coming down. Inflation is now coming down. So will this inflation be coming down in the future also? Will this particular trend be sustained? And secondly, will government keep on increasing the interest rates as it is happening? So we see this particular thing, that if some stability didn't came in the world, if the crude oil prices did not increased, okay, inflation we expect that it might come down. And if it came down, there is no need to increase the interest rates. But if inflation did not came down, if it did not came in control, then we needed to increase the interest rates also. So these are the basic things that have been provided. However, you don't need to track the data, that how much inflation was there from month to month, how many interest rate we have increased. We increased 35 basis point in September, then in October we increased this much interest rate. That microscopic information you not need to see. Just you need to have a broad understanding about this. Okay, however, this is a very basic static aspect of our economy also, and we read it fine. So very basic kind of a thing. Now going to the mains practice question for today. So mains practice question for today, it is from the polity GS paper number 2. Question reads, as per article 246 of the constitution, both the center and the states can make law for subject in the concurrent list. Yes, but the union laws will prevail in the case of conflict. In this context, analyze, is there need for reforms in the 7th schedule? Do we need to reform this, or is it correct? So this is a GS paper number 2. It will be a 10 marker question. 10 marker question, GS paper number 2. So that is all, guys, about it. I hope that you have understood it. So with this, we come to an end to the today's newspaper analysis, guys. So I hope that you are liking the video, and I hope that this video is helping you out. If you have liked, please do hit the like button. If you have liked it more, then you can leave your lovely comment. Fine, your comments and your likes are something which constantly inspire us, motivate us to do even more hard work. Thank you so much for all.